kind of restrictions the government is putting on them, it is becoming difficult for them to conduct their activities in a free manner. The government cannot arbitrarily, ban those NGOs. These conflicts always exist, but they are eventually sorted out in an amicable manner. You are misleading and you are twisting facts in front of the court. Environmental protection and human rights protection, they became very, very big issues.
When the nation calls, knowledge answers. Welcome to Chai with Current, your one-stop destination for civil services strategy, current affairs, and mentorship that matters. Today, we bring you insights from someone whose pen has shaped public opinion for decades, whose mentorship has mentored hundreds of UPSC aspirants. It's wonderful to introduce Mr. Sutanu Guru, a veteran journalist, author, and a teacher with over 40 years of experience in institutions like the Times of India, the India Today Group, and the Economic Times. Mr. Guru's sharp analysis on current affairs is regularly featured on top media platforms. So let's dive into this exclusive session where we decode the changing dynamics of India.
Thank you so much, Rupali. It's wonderful to have you here. And young friends, as the name itself suggests, Chai with Current means current affairs. And the tagline below is cracking the GS challenge. So our intentions are quite clear. However, let me state that we are not a organized coaching institute and we will not be. There are dozens of coaching institutes, some good, some average, some bad, and we do realize the need you have for those coaching institutes because it's a very competitive field. What we offer is actually what can be coined as a force multiplier for you and to help you. So, what we will offer is provide a historical perspective so that you can gain fresh insights into all the news, current affairs developments that pertain to general studies, the kind of questions which appear in civil service exams. So when I say historical perspective, what do I mean? मुझे लगता है कि आप में से लगभग जो लोग सिविल सर्विस की तैयारी कर रहे हैं, ऑलमोस्ट ऑल ऑफ यू, मेजॉरिटी आप लोग 21वीं सदी में ही पैदा हुए हैं. यू आर बॉर्न इन द 21st सेंचुरी एंड आप जाइए अपने पेरेंट्स से पूछिए और आस्क योर एल्डर्स द फॉलोइंग क्वेश्चंस. व्हेन यू वर बॉर्न, did your parents use smartphones? When you were born, did your parents enjoy access to high speed internet? When you were born, did your parents do digital payments and transactions? When you were born, did your parents watch shows and music videos on YouTube? And when you were born, did your parents spend hours every day on so many social media platforms? The answer is no. So you can see, young friends, that in just about 25 years or less, how dramatically India and the world has changed. So every news affairs development, every current affairs development, every issue has a historical context, a historical perspective, and it is important for you to understand that as you prepare for your civil services papers, right? And let me also add one more thing, that to be better informed, no matter what career you adopt eventually, to be better informed increases the chances of the success in your career and your life.
Welcome to this episode of Chai with Karan. Today, we are going to discuss about the NGO. Sir, in the recent GS paper, it says that government has imposed too many restrictions on NGOs. So, what are the facts?
Well, the reality is that compared to the past, Rupali, the number of restrictions, regulations, and rules imposed on the NGOs, which is also called the civil society sector, has definitely increased. There is no doubt about that. And there are people in the civil society movement who run NGOs or who work in NGOs. They feel that the kind of restrictions the government is putting on them, it is becoming difficult for them to conduct their activities in a free manner. And they raise the question that the Indian Constitution gives everyone a right to freedom of speech and freedom of activity. And by imposing so many restrictions, you are impinging on those freedoms. But the fact is that, yes, the current regime, the NDA regime, has imposed a lot of restrictions on NGOs, and particularly when it comes to getting donations from overseas sources. That is the key element.
Well, sir, according to many scholars, there should be a balance between freedom of speech and the national interest.
Absolutely, Rupali, it has to be that way because you cannot have, a government which says that because this NGO is raising a voice against illegal mining or destruction of forest or something, the government cannot arbitrarily, ban those NGOs because that is impinging on freedom of speech and activity. At the same time, it is also important that an NGO does not go out of its way to sabotage, projects which are of national interest. So there always has to be a balance, and there is a conflict in all modern democracies and societies that there is a need for development, and then there is a need for protection of resources, environment, livelihoods, gender equality, everything. And in most healthy modern democracies, these conflicts always exist, but they are eventually sorted out in an amicable manner.
According to the data, there is about 3.1 million, that is 31 lakhs approximately, number of NGOs in India. What is the need of so many NGOs in India?
Rupali, for this, we need, as I had stated at the beginning, we need a historical perspective and context. So, when India became independent in 1947, we were a desperately poor country. We were a proper third world country, completely poverty stricken, and the state did not have enough resources to meet the needs of its vast population. So what happened was that a lot of people who used to do what we call social service, earlier they were called people in social service, so they started performing some activities which would help people, and that is how this NGO concept came into being. Non-governmental organization. Basically, non-governmental organization meant that basic needs of citizens which the government was not able to fulfill, the NGO started fulfilling those needs. That is how the NGO movement started. And initially, Rupali, for the first 3 or 4 decades, the civil society or NGO sector was focused primarily on literacy, education, healthcare, gender equality and gender justice, access to legal system for the poor people, and things like this, which are basically livelihood issues. So there was very little controversy around NGOs or civil society groups. But around the 1970s, what happened was that environmental protection and human rights protection, they became very big issues, and currently they are the most dominant issues. So anywhere in the world you go, there is talk of climate change, global warming. So every country in the world has NGOs who are against any industrial project because they think it harms the environment. And similarly, any country you go, there are human rights organizations who say that the state is being very oppressive, that it is killing the rights of the citizens, that it is imprisoning and jailing people unfairly and unjustly. It happens in India also. And what has happened is that in many ways, the state cannot fulfill every vacuum. The state, no matter how mighty a state is, how mighty its apparatus is, there are always gaps. So the number of NGOs, when you say 31.5 lakhs, तो ऐसी बात नहीं है कि वो 31.5 lakhs के सरकारी दफ्तर जैसे हैं या a government ministry or a department. A lot of these NGOs are very small, very focused, and they do work in a very limited geographical area. So, for instance, maybe there is one NGO which is looking at the killing of the unborn female child in Haryana, in one particular district of Haryana. And it has been a success story because, 3 decades ago, the sex ratio in Haryana had become alarming, because in Haryana they used to kill, abort unborn females. But in Karnal, Hisar, and other districts, there were small NGOs. You and I don't even know their names. They worked very hard, in educating the parents, in creating awareness, and now the sex ratio has vastly improved. So don't go by this 30.1.5 lakhs. It is just that most of them are small, focused. They don't get attention. It is only the high profile big NGOs which create the controversies and get the attention.
And sir, there is a debate and controversy related to NGOs in India, wherein there are two schools, whereover enthusiasm of NGOs of doing good and ending up with hampering the national interest, whereas the other opinion says that NGOs are force for good because they expose government and hence government don't like them.
Well, the interesting thing, Rupali, is that both the arguments are valid. Both the arguments are valid. There are instances where motivated and genuine NGOs, they have raised their voices against many acts of the government. It could be sand mining, it could be cleaning of forests, it could be destruction of trees, it could be illegal mining in some tribal areas, it could be exploitation of tribals by contractors and companies. So these are issues which the NGOs raise, and they do embarrass the government. And by government, I don't mean this NDA regime or that regime. All governments by nature don't like being embarrassed. No matter which party is in power in the state or the central level, no government wants to be exposed and embarrassed. So that argument is valid, no doubt, that yes, we need NGOs as a force for good, because they do raise the alarm bells when something very damaging to the long term interest of the country is happening. For instance, let's take this, आपको शायद पता भी होगा कि अभी recently उत्तराखंड में cloud burst हुआ है, और we don't even know how many people have died, landslides, cloud burst, etc. So there are genuine NGOs and environmentalists who have been warning that yes, tourism is good, but don't develop so aggressively, that you disturb the entire ecological balance of Uttarakhand and the Himalayas, and if you do that, you will have destruction. तो आपको शायद अंदाजा नहीं होगा कि 1998 से उत्तराखंड में लगभग हर साल या तो क्लाउड बर्स्ट या लैंडस्लाइड और फ्लडिंग, एंड आई थिंक इफ माइट रिकॉल इन केदारनाथ से स्टार्ट हुआ था 2013 में, more than 5,000 people died in flash floods. So to that extent, yes, but there is the other extreme also. There are NGOs who are actually against India's national interests. They claim that they are fighting for good, but in reality, they may also be actually behind the scenes sponsored or paid by someone else. There are cases, for instance, of corporate rivalry. जैसे यहाँ पे किसी को उड़ीसा में या छत्तीसगढ़ में या झारखंड में किसी को एक माइन कॉर्पोरेट को दे दिया गया, ओके, देन सम एनजीओ विल स्टार्ट प्रोटेस्टिंग. पता चलता है कि some rival company has actually sponsored that. So you have NGOs like that also, and they are determined to stop any industrial activity. That is not possible, because people need to improve the quality of their lives. You cannot say that poor people and tribal people, just because वो 2000 साल से गांव में रहते थे वैसे ही पड़े रहे. They also need better access to electricity, LPG connections, possibly a cooler, maybe a fridge, depending on their income levels. And whenever you do that, you need electricity, you need energy. वो आएगा कहाँ से? So if NGOs are determined कि नहीं हम किसी को allow नहीं करेंगे, it is harming the poor, because the rich guys don't care anyway living in cities. So that is the dichotomy. And again, as I said, in a democracy, this conflict is perpetual. It always exists. It is up to the health of a democracy as to how you sort out this dichotomy. But before you go, let me give you just two examples of how NGOs or civil societies can do good and remain non-controversial, and also become highly controversial. So let's take the first issue first. Uh, there is something you must have heard of called the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill Gates is the founder of Microsoft, billionaire, very, very wealthy. He has donated most of his money for charity and philanthropy. And that is how the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation runs. So, बहुत लोगों को ये पता भी नहीं है कि बिल गेट्स फाउंडेशन इन इंडिया हैज एक्चुअली स्पेंट बिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर्स. मतलब $1 billion is 1,000 million. It has spent billions of dollars giving money to NGOs. But what is the primary focus of Gates Foundation? The primary focus is sanitation, healthcare, education, and computer literacy. And there are thousands and thousands of, like you said, small NGOs who are financed by the Bill Gates Foundation and who are doing excellent work at the village level, at local level, at district level, in improving healthcare, education, sanitation. They are not much talked about, they are not controversial. So that is one extreme of the NGO sector, or you can call it a case study. The other extreme I would like to point out, and a lot of you young friends need to understand the historical perspective, is Narmada Bachao Andolan. Narmada Bachao Andolan is a historic movement. It has become kind of a case study worldwide for environmental protection, etc., etc. So the backdrop is that Jawaharlal Nehru was the first Prime Minister of India. He believed in science and technology. He believed that dams on rivers are a good because they will lead to irrigation, better water. So he did build Bhakra Nangal Dam, Hirakud Dam, and the Narmada Dam was actually envisioned when Nehru was Prime Minister. But unfortunately, for various reasons, the project kept getting delayed, and eventually in the late 70s and early 80s, the project got a green signal. तो 85 में जब नर्मदा में डैम का कंस्ट्रक्शन का काम शुरू हुआ, whenever you build a dam, there are catchment areas where tens of thousands of families are displaced. So जब डैम का काम शुरू हुआ, मेधा पाटकर at that time was obviously a younger activist. She went to those areas and she started this Narmada Bachao Andolan. And within a few years, a lot of celebrities, Bollywood stars, environmentalists, politicians, everybody joined the bandwagon. And it became a very, very successful movement. और इतना सक्सेसफुल मूवमेंट हो गया कि the World Bank was financing it, the whole Narmada Dam project. The World Bank withdrew in 1993. But again, Supreme Court gave a go-ahead. The displaced people were given adequate compensation. But again and again, Medha Patkar and all her NGOs and her colleagues or whatever, they kept approaching the Supreme Court. इतना हद तक हो गया कि the Supreme Court finally had to harshly rebuke Medha Patkar and her colleagues, and the Supreme Court openly said in court that you people are lying, you are misleading and you are twisting facts in front of the court, and this is not done. And eventually the full green signal was given. और उस टाइम में one of the arguments given by Medha Patkar and her colleagues was that ये नर्मदा का पानी कभी भी सौराष्ट्र और कच्छ में नहीं पहुंच पाएगा, because Saurashtra and Kutch were arid regions like Rajasthan and they desperately needed water. So she and her colleagues claimed कि पानी पहुंचेगा ही नहीं, तो ये project fraud है. But what has really happened in reality is that Narmada Dam is a reality, और सौराष्ट्र और कच्छ में नर्मदा का पानी पहुंच चुका है, and the farmers there are becoming very prosperous. So we have two types of NGOs, and at the end, let me conclude that in every sector in the world, private, government, NGO, civil society, wherever, in every sector of the world, in every aspect of life, there are people who are genuinely good and there are also frauds. So when we look at NGOs, we have to look at it from that perspective. Thank you, Rupali.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful example. Definitely, this is going to help us. Stay tuned with this episode of Chai with Karan, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.